So welcome to everyone that's joined the call today. I can see some people still logging in at the moment, but I think it's just gone 11 o'clock UK time, 12 o'clock in on the continent. So I think we'd start the call now. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, or rather Wout Squintels from Delta and Patrick Clarens from EMMES. We're planning for the webinar to take a maximum of 40 minutes. There is a dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen, so you can submit questions to us during the webinar. We'll try and pick those up as we go through or take some questions at the end. If we can't respond to them during the webinar today, we'll try and come back to everyone individually after the call. If you'd like a copy of the slides, the presentation at the end, please contact us and let us know. We'll be happy to share those with you. Yeah, if you have any technical questions or anything, please just use the dialog box and we'll try and deal with those as soon as we can. So perhaps just moving through into the webinar, going on to the first slide. Just thought we'd start by just sharing a few of the key headlines from our latest reports on the European storage market. I mean, it's a picture of strong growth in Europe. 2017 saw growth of almost 50% in overall market size for electrical energy storage, which is pretty much in line with our expectations from the first EMMES report that we did in December last year. However, the nature of that growth was somewhat different, and Wout will explain a bit more about that as we go through the presentation. Looking forward over the next couple of years, well, we see continued strong growth in the sector. We see growth of 45%, 40% in the next 2 years. And the annual market will be worth more than €1 billion by 2019. So very strong picture. The front of the meter segment will remain really important for the European energy storage market, although the behind the meter segments are developing quite rapidly. So some really positive headlines have come out from our latest EMMES report. So just moving forward, in terms of the study, the presentation team today, as I mentioned, it's the three of us. So Patrick is joining us for the call today. Patrick is Secretary General of EMMES, the European Storage Association, and is joining us from his office in Brussels today. Myself and Wout Squintels are in Delta's Edinburgh office. So just moving forward, I'd just like to give an overview of the presentation that we prepared today. So we'd like to do just brief introductions for those that don't know us or aren't familiar with EMMES, and also just to introduce EMMES, and just explain the objectives and the scope of this report. And then we'll move forward in a bit more detail around the headlines from the latest EMMES report that we've done. And Patrick will give an update on European policy and perhaps what to watch into 2019. Wout will then talk through some of the trends that we see in some of the key countries and discuss what we think is a hot topic in the market. So just moving forward briefly, Patrick, if I could bring you in at this point and ask you just to give a brief introduction to EMMES.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So I'm Patrick Clarens, Secretary General from EMMES. EMMES is a European association representing the whole energy storage sector. So you will find logos of companies making components or making whole batteries. Then you see the companies researching them. There are some research centers, universities, but also consultants. Then you have the utilities, which are employing them. And you have also the distribution system operators or transmission system operators. So you have everyone united in EMMES, which can be sometimes challenging, but our positions are very strong because they represent the whole sector. And if you would like to have your logo added to this, you can send me a mail after this. We've been created in 2011, and our main focus is to lobby the European institutions to get funding for research and demonstration of energy storage, and to shape the market design, the revenue or the business case supporting market design. That's what we do as the two main tasks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. And just to introduce those that aren't familiar with Delta, just briefly, just to explain who we are and the work that we do. We're an energy research consulting company focusing purely on the transformation of the energy system. This transformation from an old energy system you see on the left to the one you see described on the right. Everyone, I'm sure, on the call today is familiar with this huge transition in the energy system that's ongoing in the industry. In terms of our focus, we focus very much around the technologies, markets, products coming into the built environment, often on the customer side of the meter, but also often on the energy network. So we do most work around the customers and around energy networks. In terms of our clients, we work primarily for many of the large energy companies across Europe and further afield. Many of the main technology developers, boiler companies, product manufacturers are amongst our clients, and we do a lot of work with network operators and policymakers and investors in the space. Our model is a research consulting one, so we have subscription research services available to our clients. Alongside, we do a lot of bespoke, tailored consultancy work. So we're very much a knowledge-based consultant focusing purely around this new energy industry that's growing up around us. And we have a very strong research team focusing on the flexibility and storage markets. And you can see just on the bottom left of the screen here, just some examples of the type of research that we offer to our clients. So we'll be very happy to talk to anyone on the call today about this research, and you can see a link there to our website where you can find lots more information and examples of our work. So in terms of EMMES, which stands for the European Market Monitor on Energy Storage, this is the second edition. Our first edition we published in December, at the end of last year. This is a partnership between ourselves and EMMES, with three main objectives, really. One is to provide a common set of data, market and policy information that industry stakeholders can rely on. Second is to really create something that becomes an accepted evidence base to support the debate, particularly with policymakers and shapers around energy storage. But it's also to save, obviously, the members of EMMES and members of subscribers to Delta's research time and effort in staying on top of what is a fast-moving, quite dynamic market. So those are the three main objectives. We're producing the report every 6 months. So EMMES 2 is the second one. We'll be producing another report in some months' time. The report is available to members of EMMES, I know many of which are on the call today, and also our own subscribers at Delta. But non-subscribers and non-members of EMMES can access the report and purchase it directly. It's available for €3,000. And if you'd like to purchase the report, then feel free to contact myself or Patrick or his colleagues at EMMES to discuss that. Our contact details are on this presentation. In terms of the report itself, just to give a quick overview of the structure, we focus on key markets in Europe or the regions in Europe, and we look at each individual market or region in terms of the development of the storage market. On the right-hand side at the top, you can see we break down the analysis into the three main sectors: front of meter, C&I behind the meter, and residential behind the meter. We provide a summary of the overall status and trends across Europe and the individual countries within the report. And we've added in a market hot topic, which in the current report is around bundled business models, the integration of PV and storage, particularly for residential customers, as a bundled proposition. And going forward, we'll be interested to get feedback on what market participants see as hot topics, and we'll be including a section on a hot topic on each report in future. So in terms of the report itself, the next slide shows the contents page. You can see it's about a 50-page report, and it's broken down by country or regional segments. So a very quick run through there of what the report is and the structure of the report. Perhaps now we can move on to share with you some of the detail, and perhaps Wout, I'll hand over to you at this point and just ask you to give first of all an overview of our forecast and how we see the overall European market developing.
Thanks, Andy. So just based on the key messages that Andy already mentioned at the start of the presentation, this is a visual slide to just show you how the market has been developing until now and how we see it developing in the future. So this shows electrical energy storage market, annual market size in megawatt hours, broken down in three segments. In terms of the technologies included in this, it's again stationary electrical energy storage with the exclusion of pumped hydro in this instance. And as you can see, the market in 2017 has almost reached the size of around 600 megawatt hours. If you look at the growth rate, it's around 49% growth from 2016 to 2017, which if you look at our previous EMMES report is in line with our forecast for 2017. However, interestingly, the growth came from unexpected places, I guess. Residential market exceeded our expectations, while front of the meter underperformed largely because of few individual markets that we'll talk about later on in this presentation. When looking into the future, you can see that the kind of strong growth will continue. We see the market growing in 2018, growing 45%, 2019 around 40%. Behind the meter will continue on the same trend, especially the CNI segment, which is now starting to finally kind of take shape. Residential will continue to be strong as well. The front of the meter will remain a bit more fluctuating maybe, but still a big part of the market as bigger capacity projects come in. As for the overall market size, we foresee the market reaching, by 2019, reaching 3.5 gigawatt hours. And interestingly, the 2019 will be the year when the annual market exceeds 1 gigawatt hour. And yeah, that's kind of how we foresee the market in the near future.
Okay, thanks, Wout. Just an overview of the European market, and then we'll go through some of the country trends in a bit more detail in a few minutes' time. So just move forward in the presentation. I'd now like to perhaps move on to an update around policy, European policy, and what to watch in 2019. So I'd ask Patrick to perhaps come into the discussion and talk through the next 2 or 3 slides.
Thank you, Andy. So if you go to the next slide, basically this year, 2019, is a very important year for energy storage because it is foreseen that the Clean Energy Package, CEP, will be finalized by the end of the year or latest beginning of next year. And this Electricity Directive and Electricity Regulation, these 2 texts which are putting a regulatory frame around electricity market design, are crucial for energy storage. So they're expected to be finalized in the next 6, 7, 8 months. And once they're there, we will have all the first European framework which clearly recognizes energy storage. So we're looking very much forward to this. Because for the moment, as you can see, there's no real regulatory framework specifically looking at energy storage, and everything which existed in the other documents were mainly looking into operational details of pump hydro storage. So it was not really adapted to newer kind of storage. Now, what is still to come in this Electricity Directive and Electricity Regulation, we will see, which is the most important point for us, to have a definition of energy storage. There were quite some different definitions proposed. The European Commission proposed a definition which was very open, which did not limit any application and did not limit any technology. So it was what we were also very supportive of. And in the discussion with the Parliament and the Council, the 2 other legislative bodies which are in the discussion included in this trilogues, it started to move to a definition where you had to transform electricity before you may store it, and you had to transform it back before you may use it. Meaning, if you would have taken electricity as heat and used the heat directly, it would not have qualified for energy storage. The same if you would have looked at hydrogen storage and used the hydrogen in the wider society. But this has been changed now, so we are very confident that we'll have a definition which is open and agnostic regarding technologies and open and agnostic regarding the different applications. What is still pending, and we saw an evolution compared to the first draft which the European Commission proposed, was the question of who may use energy storage. And in EES, we have a very clear position. We have a position paper on our website. If you're interested in our documents, you can have a more detailed look in this. But we basically say, don't ask the question who may own storage, but ask the question who may provide which services to the market. And then it is not important which technologies are used. It could be storage or others. So we say that the transmission system operators and distribution system operators, which are very often seen due to unbundling as not being allowed to own energy storage devices, that they could also use these for infrastructure services. So instead of building a second line, they could use energy storage. And this is something which is evolving now for the moment from a starting point where it was not possible at all. So the Commission didn't foresee any possibility besides there was an absolute market, an absolute technical need and no market offer. Then TSOs or DSOs could have storage. So they moved away from this position of actually not allowing TSOs or DSOs to have storage to a position which is more accepting the idea that there are some situations, and maybe if there's no one market offering, then they could own it and operate energy storage devices. So it's not clear for the moment, will be clarified by the end of the year. And we also have some support, or we're pushing very strongly to have longer term contract for storage to have investors some security on the revenue streams. And this is something which started the discussions of having frequency services, so grid support services, ancillary services, there are different terminologies for this, which would be tendered out for a one-day period and only 1 day ahead. And this was the main drive for us in order to allow renewable energies to participate in these markets, and they have a good visibility 1 day ahead about what they will generate, to the situation where we have now 40%, which can be tendered up to 1 year. So we believe this 1 year is still not enough, so we would like to allow longer-term contracts for system services to be up to 4, maybe 5 years. So we're trying to push in this direction. We're very happy we managed already to support the idea to have it for 1 year. Now let's see how it goes on. And what we still see happening is that energy storage, and I give always the same example, can be taxed twice as a consumption. Once when it is coming into the storage device, you have to pay these consumption taxes or levies, and once when the final consumption takes place, when it is consumed at the end. And I always say there's something wrong then with the system, because either it's the laws of the parliaments which are not right, or it's the laws of physics which are not right, because a kilowatt hour can be consumed only once. So these are the main points we have in this clean energy package we're looking at, and we will be very happy to tell you end of the year how they evolved in the discussions of the politicians. On the next slide, you see that there is
Patrick, it's Andy. Can I just ask, the 4 issues you've identified at the bottom of that slide, how optimistic are you about a positive outcome on those points for energy storage?
The first one, I'm quite optimistic that we will have a very technology neutral definition. The ownership question is already evolving, that in some specific situations regulated entities may have storage. So I think this will be clarified. So it will also go a bit further than we are now. The long-term contract is tougher not to crack. 1 year we have for the moment, and I'm confident we will get more, but I'm not really sure if we will manage, because a lot of different interests are coming together in this question. And the double taxation, actually the Commission has no right to tell the member states what they need to do on taxation. So this is a member state's prerogative. The Commission can only highlight that it should not be unfairly treated or discriminated against. And this, I'm sure this will be in the text also. So it's looking quite positive for storage in the whole text, because it's also giving the possibility to allow for self-consumption in these texts and so on and so on. So there are a lot of different possibilities.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, there's a positive picture. Okay, thank you. So move on to the next slide then.
So on the next slide, thank you. I wanted to share another document which is ongoing, which is the Strategic Action Plan on Batteries. You maybe heard the Vice President of the European Union responsible for the Energy Union. He, Maros Šefčovič, he gave a lot of different speeches about the fact that we need to manufacture in Europe the batteries, that we do not want to switch from an oil dependency from the Middle East to a raw material dependency or battery technology dependency into Asia. So this is one of the strong points which he wants to drive forward. And therefore, there was a strategic action plan on batteries, which was presented in May this year. And it is really a kind of roadmap or pathway on how we can get towards producing energy storage device, or in this case specifically producing batteries in Europe, having the whole chain address from the raw material to the cells, the cell manufacturing, the pack manufacturing, but also then the utilization, in this case in electric vehicles, but afterwards also the recycling to have the raw material available again for the new materials. So this is something which we see very strongly. We see the political push in this direction. So that's also interesting to watch because it will unfold in the second half of this year.
Okay, Patrick, that's really interesting initiative, I think, Patrick. And I was wondering, we've got a lot of energy companies, manufacturers, other stakeholders on the call today. How do you think they should be engaging with that initiative going forward?
Very precisely, you will see that in the next months or weeks, there will be a European technology and innovation platform created on batteries, called the ETIP on batteries. And this European Technology Innovation Platform will have different working groups and will include everyone who would like to work on this. So there will be a call for candidates, which will be published by the Commission probably. We in EES, we relay this to our members and inform them in advance. And you can then come forward with your name and the candidate, the CV of the person who would like to participate in this effort of the European Technology Innovation Platform, this ETIP on batteries. And then there will be a selection process for the working groups, and there will be a selection process also for the executive committee, which is driving, or the governing board, it will depend how we will name it, which will drive this technology platform. As such, this European Technology Innovation Platform is driven by the European Commission, by the DG Energy, and will address all future questions on battery manufacturing, and so on. So if I could advise you, if you want to participate in this, either drop us an email at EASE or watch the Commission web pages on this ETIP and batteries.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Patrick.
But again, it will be a topic we will then also report in the next EMMES about how this unfolded and what's happening on this topic. Now, coming to other policies and regulations, there are a lot of them we are touching on storage. Maybe the most important ones would be the new Renewable Energy Directive, Directive 2, which has been, the political compromise has been agreed upon. It's not finalized, it's not voted yet in Parliament and Council, but it is almost implemented. There will be also more information once it's implemented in the next week or month. And it is mainly driving or pushing for our storage topics, for self-consumption, and it is pushing for decarbonizing transport and heating and cooling, so pushing for electric vehicles, and maybe also having the heating and cooling with renewable electricity decentralized. What is interesting to know for the ones who are looking into the details of how to apply these technologies, it's that everything which is connected to the grid is obliged to follow the EU network codes. And there are different network codes. There are some for the operation, there are some from the market point of view, and there are some for the connection. And these network codes are very specific and very technical, and they give system operation guidelines, and network balancing code, for example, give very specific request what your device must be able to do. So there are some network codes we're watching and we're pushing. There's one about the grid connection network code, because for the moment it's covering only pump hydro storage, not any other storage technology, meaning on one side there are no binding requirements, therefore, on the other storage technologies, but on the other side, a lot of member states are tempted to develop their own rules, so maybe it's better to have those at addressed also in one network code, the grid connection network code. Then obviously I've touched the Internal Energy Market Directive, which is updated by this Clean Energy Package, which I showed the 2 slides before. And this is also the Internal Energy Market Directive is setting the basis for this unbundling obligation between transmission and distribution, so the regulated entity, and the ones who are generating and making electricity available on the system. And then there's an interesting document which shows the different ideas which the Commission has about energy storage. It was published a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, and it's worthwhile to have a look at it for having an understanding how this is taken up by the Commission. That's all in a nutshell. I can add.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. That's a very thorough, good run through of what's going on in the policy side. There's more details, obviously, in the EMMES 2.0 report, and obviously Patrick and his team at EASE have got fantastic insight and understanding of all of these issues. So I'd like to move on perhaps to the next section and ask Welts to talk us through some of the sort of key trends that we identify in the EMMES report in looking at specific countries or regions and the segments of the market. So Welts, would you like to talk through the next few slides?
Thanks. So moving on to the first segment. So we've broken this down into the three kind of the segments that we did in the report, which is residential, behind the meter, residential, behind the meter, CNI, and front of the meter segment. And I'll start with the residential. Overall, if looking back at 6 months ago and an updated view after that, the market has exceeded its expectations. Specifically in the two more exciting markets, so Italy and Germany. Both of the markets, I think, reached a size that wasn't expected by a lot of stakeholders, and which led to an overall market being bigger than expected as well. So if you look at that, Germany leads the way, around 37,000 new installations in 2017, and we expect the market to continue to grow. There's a lot of exciting players active in the German market with interesting propositions and really leading the way for other markets and helping other markets understand how to reach the customer in the best way possible. Looking at another market, which is a market where there's still quite a lot of excitement, even though it's struggling in terms of its size, it's UK. And even with the annual market size remaining relatively low, there's still a lot of excitement in the market, mainly because of the opportunities from the kind of demand side response and flexibility, which allows for different, more interesting business models and different applications for those residential batteries. I think the EV market or the excitement around the EV market is also at this point helping the residential energy storage space. We'll see how it develops in the longer term. And if you look at the Italian market, again, it continues to grow, and the market, you can see more and more players entering the market with compelling propositions and quite aggressive price points as well, just to reach the initial customers. And in addition to that, the subsidy schemes are starting to expand outside of Lombardia. So this will obviously help the market escalate and I think follow the steps of the German market. Outside of that, there's few other markets that are quite exciting from the kind of future perspective. Czech Republic, again, quite a few players have launched their products or even propositions. There's a subsidy available to customers who install PV and storage. Similarly, Austria, there's been a announcement or a plan to reach 100,000 households or subsidize PV and storage installation for around 100,000 households in the next 5 years. And Republic of Ireland, a lot of interest in that market, especially from the DSR perspective, from the flexibility perspective, opportunities for residential batteries to take part in that. So all of this is playing a role in other new markets that are becoming more and more exciting, and we'll see over the next 6 months how that develops as well. Moving on to the CNI segment. So overall, 6 months ago, it was a small market. In terms of the actual size, not a lot has changed, but there have been more and more projects in the pipeline across Europe, which helps us build a good future view of that. So in this instance, again, UK and Germany continue to lead with exciting future opportunities in a range of different segments. So if you look at the UK 2017 market, which around 15 megawatt hours of real behind the meter CNI energy storage installed, but we see the market having quite a steep growth. And 2018 has already seen quite a few installations, as you can see with the kind of solid orange coloring there. If you look at the German market, 2017 was slightly bigger than the UK market, and beyond that, 2018, 2019, we foresee significant capacities coming in. There's quite a lot of exciting business models in the CNI space that we are at the moment actually looking at for a separate piece of research. And yeah, especially in these two markets, it's getting more exciting. New business models are coming in, and I think market players are starting to understand who and how to target. In Nordics, a very important thing to note is the data center segment, which is 6 months ago, there was only kind of talk about that being a potential segment, but now it's actually realizing there are trials happening with data centers with batteries, where batteries are being used for UPS as well as the reserve services in those markets, and that's something that can be easily replicated to other markets. Additionally, Czech Republic and Poland are presenting opportunities. Interestingly, for longer duration energy storage, the players are quite established in those markets, so they have a good position to capture more of that market. In Poland, there's also a capacity market that has been approved by the EU, and looking at how capacity market is developed in the UK, it's likely that it will have preference to a longer duration energy storage system. And then Italy and Spain, while no activity in those markets at the moment, looking at the individual policies and regulation in those markets, we see those markets as places to look at in the near future. And moving on to the front of the meter segment, again, UK and Germany are really leading this as well. However, you can see that the markets tend to fluctuate quite a lot in both spaces. So if you look at the UK, you can see that the 2017 market actually reached a smaller size than expected. So it was around 90 megawatt hours below what you could have seen from the pipeline, which in turn affected how the overall forecast looked and affected the whole overview of the front of the meter segment, and it underperforming basically. However, those projects have now come live this year. Similarly, for Germany, you can see that it goes 2016 went up, 2017 slightly lower, 2018 we foresee it going up again. But overall, the markets are still big, and there's significant capacities in the pipeline, kind of based on different projects in regards to rapid charging in the UK or co-location in Germany, for example. Outside of that, you see Republic of Ireland as an interesting market due to the DS3 scheme, which would present significant opportunities for grid-scale batteries at the moment, looking at that. Also, Poland and Czech Republic, again, there have been recent projects in those markets that are trialing the use of batteries for helping the network, mainly frequency response, and capacity market would now be a new opportunity, especially in Poland. And then lastly, again, it goes to Italy and Spain, which both of the markets haven't had any significant projects actually come live, but they're both awaiting changes in the regulatory and policy side of things, which is related to the ancillary services markets in both places, which obviously after being revised and certain changes likely to be made, the energy storage market for grid scale applications should open up and enable batteries to support the kind of electricity system infrastructure in both of those markets.
Okay, thanks, Val. I mean, you've run through that quite quickly, and the astute amongst you would have noticed that we've taken off the labels on the y-axis, and obviously the data is fully available in the EMMES report itself. So if you have access to the report already, please refer to the report to get all the data. Val, just briefly, what would you say are the most promising countries, having looked across the space in terms of the front of meter space, for example? What would be the the one or two countries you would pick out as being the most promising over the next year or so?
In terms of actual future outlook, again, Germany and UK will remain big, but it has more players active in it, more established players active in it. And while those markets will remain the most exciting ones for front of the meter energy storage, I think I would actively keep an eye on Czech Republic and Italy and Poland, just because of the development of capacity markets in both Italy and Poland, and frequency response market in Czech Republic, which tend to be drivers for kind of batteries or electrical energy storage.
Okay. And what about the behind the meter segment? Which ones are?
Looking at residential behind the meter, again, Germany will remain the biggest market for a while. However, Italy, you can see it's already becoming more competitive. Players are understanding the opportunities there, and it will only grow as more subsidy schemes come live. Additionally, Czech Republic, again, market is showing quite a lot of promise. And in terms of in Nordics, obviously, I would keep an eye on Sweden. It's still relatively low and the economics do not stack up, but if certain changes take place in regards to the charging structure there, might be an opportunity.
Okay, cool.
And I guess for the CNI, just quickly, UK and Germany will be the main markets, as I mentioned before, but Czech Republic for certain applications for longer duration, Nordics for data centers, and again, Italy and Spain could be quite interesting in maybe a longer term.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that. So just briefly, Val, so perhaps you could just profile the hot topic that we've covered in the EMMES 2.0 report. And then we'd like to, if we have time, to run a quick couple of polls. We have about 70 people on the call today. And I know people are always interested in these webinars. If we run a poll and they're interested in seeing what the overall stakeholder group thinks about different topics. So just briefly on the hot topic, and then we'll run a couple of polls.
Yeah, of course. So looking at this, so this is something new that we've added to the EMMES report, looking at basically choosing one hot topic in the market to talk about. In this instance, it was regarding residential segment, mainly talking about new and innovative offerings in the European residential energy storage market, which tend to be presented in different forms. Sometimes it's a community offering or cloud storage offering or a flat rate offering, really the players trying to unlock new values from the customers, get stickier customers, create new revenue streams, and enable providing wider system benefits. So you can see there's a range of different players from different backgrounds offering that. I think one player that's missing from that is also now Innogy has a solar cloud offering, so I would add that to the energy supplier section. And if you look at the geographical coverage for these types of offerings, they're all stemming from Germany. It's a good testing ground for that. It's a good place to try reaching certain scale with those offerings, but they're starting to expand as the market grows. So to Italian market, next to Germany, to kind of Czech Republic, Austria and Switzerland as well. So Czech Republic, E.ON has the solar cloud offering recently launched. Sonnen is active in Austria, Switzerland, Italy, as well as actually now looking at Australia. And you can see Sonnen at the moment is leading the way, but other players are following quite closely with the launch in Germany and but more and now an easier way to expand to other markets. And again, if you want to find out more about that, there's a lot more on this in the EMMES report about comparing different business models, the key, I guess, unique selling points for each, and how they actually operate, and what are the technologies involved in those business models.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. And I know in our own research we go into a lot more detail, don't we, on this whole topic. It's a very interesting one.
Yeah.
So just moving on to the summary slide to bring back our forecast. What we thought we'd like to do, we have about 70 people on the call today. So we'd like to ask people for their feedback on our forecast. So we've developed a poll, which we'd like to open now. And we'd like to ask people to give their views on our forecast. So you should see appearing on your screen now a dialog box asking you a question. Do you think our overall growth forecast for 2019 that we put forward, so this is for the overall market, is very high? So you think it's really optimistic? Do you think it's on the high side? Do you think it's about right? But do you think it's low, on the low side, or do you think it's very low? And we're interested to know from the group. We have about 70 people, I think, on the webinar today. If you just like to click on one of those buttons and submit the poll, we'd be interested to see what people think, and we can hopefully publish that and share that with you. I know from experience of webinars, people are always quite interested to see what the overall view is from the market. And it's quite interesting. I mean, we actually had close to 200 people register for the webinar today, and we have about 70 online, which is a bit less than we would normally get. I think we normally get about half of the people that register coming online. Many listen to it afterwards, obviously, on the recording. But it's probably holiday season, so there's probably a few people on the beach as we're doing this. But there's a whole range of different types of companies, from energy suppliers, network companies, startups, innovators, policy makers, shapers, R&D people, obviously battery manufacturers. Quite a few boiler manufacturers are on the call today, R&D groups, academics. So there's quite a wide range of different companies with different perspectives, I think.
Yeah.
So just looking at the poll,
so
we've got...
I'll just close it and share it.
So we'll just close the poll now. So we have so this was from about 50 people who voted, I think, something like that. So 62% think the forecast is about right. Which is, well done, Bounce.
Yeah, great.
And it's fairly balanced, actually. Some think it's on the low side and some think it's on the high side. Probably more people are thinking it's a bit conservative rather than a bit optimistic. So in terms of, I think, the group on the call today, I think the poll indicates that actually there's a lot of people think that this forecast is reflective of their own expectations. So we'd just like to briefly do a second poll, asking you a different question. This is obviously a strong growth market, but there's a lot of issues, as Patrick's already discussed, around policy and regulation that perhaps are preventing even faster growth. So we're interested in your views as to what do you think are the major issues preventing faster growth in the overall electrical energy storage market. Is it a lack of clear and robust policy that supports energy storage? Is it more specifically to do with actually network codes and grid regulations? Is it perhaps more on the behind the meter space, perhaps, about the lack of compelling propositions for customers to buy or get excited by? So is it more around the customer that is our major issue? Or is it actually to do with cost? It's actually the cost of storage is still quite high, and it needs to be reduced further to make it attractive for customers, but also to make it more attractive compared to alternative solutions. Or it might be something else. So I think on this poll, you can vote for more than one thing. I'd recommend you don't vote for them all, but if you could perhaps vote for one or two, that would probably be sensible. And if you click on the other, feel free to just put in the dialog box on the right-hand side, or the questions box on the right-hand side. When you say other, what do you mean? And this will be useful for us as we think about the EMMES 3 report, the next report. This might help us understand what would be most useful for us to focus on in terms of kind of hot topic type issues.
Yeah.
So I can see the votes coming in. So we have about 80% of people voted. So that's probably over 50 people. So we'll close the poll in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. The poll's closed. So let's publish the result and see what the answer is. So okay, so
even split.
Yeah,
Almost.
it's a fairly even split actually. Certainly cost of storage. Majority see that as a big issue for the sector, but the policy and the grid codes, they're seen as the top 3 issues. Lack of compelling propositions for customers. Interesting, 26% only voted for that, and then there were 6% of others. So if you voted for other, it'd be interesting to perhaps if you send us a note and let us know what you meant by other, then we can pick that up afterwards. So just briefly, I'm conscious of time here, but just to summarize then the webinar, you can see that we've got a very positive view about the electrical energy storage market going forward. And this is all available in the EMMES report, which is published and is immediately available should you want access to it. To get more details and to discuss it, then please contact myself or Wout or Patrick. And Patrick.
Andy, can I just add something? Want to first of all, obviously, thank the participants for joining us, but I also wanted to highlight one point. For the ones who are interested in getting more into the details, we're making the Energy Storage Global Conference in October in Brussels, end of October, the last 25th to 27th of October. And you find this on our webpage. So if you're interested, you can participate, and maybe we can send them a link to the ones who have registered to this conference afterwards.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can certainly do that. We'll add something into the webinar slides as well. Which with the link as well. That's a good idea. I'm conscious of time, but there are a few questions. Perhaps if we just restrict it literally to 3 more minutes. There was 1 or 2 questions have come in. I know there has been a question, Patrick, regarding the network codes, the impact of network codes, specifically ones on renewables. Requirement for renewables to hold standby generation for mandatory ancillary services. Do you have any comment on that? Or?
So to be honest, I'm not aware that they are mandatory backup or need for the question is, what would be the impact of network code, specifically the one that requires renewables to hold standby generation mandatory for ancillary services? And I don't see this happen. I don't see today a regulation which is forcing renewables to participate in the system services. What I do see happening today is that if you want to get subsidized, you need to bid into the market. So you may not just receive your feed-in tariff for the new installations. You need to sell your electricity first on the market, and you will then get some kind of top of this top up in money to get to a guaranteed price for your megawatt hour. Okay. But you need to bid into the market, and that's the tricky part, because if you bid into a market, you need to fulfill what you have promised to fulfill, what you sent. So there is an impact that the renewables need now to bid into the market, and therefore you need to really deliver what you promised you would deliver, and that there would be, or there is a need to firm this capacity. It can be done by storage devices, or it can be done by backup generation. So there are different possibilities on doing this. But I'm not aware that renewables are forced to bid in system services for the moment.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. So Kelvin, who asked the question, perhaps we'll follow up with you separately after the webinar on that topic, actually. And that's just one final question, perhaps, just in the final 30 seconds or so, a question around the reasons for the domestic growth forecast, domestic growth exceeding our forecast last year. Somebody interested as to why was that sector stronger than we anticipated, do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's, again, it was largely driven by 2 markets, so Germany and Italy. And there were a range of factors that played into that. I think the fact that the market players have been very successful with positioning themselves to get the most out of the kind of customers they can reach. I think additionally the costs were relatively appealing to, if you buy a new PV system, you would be quite... it's a good proposition to bundle them together. So range of those factors played into that. Obviously, in Italy, it was the fact that there's the subsidy scheme, which creates quite a good proposition, I think, in terms of the paybacks. But just looking at, so, range of different factors played into that. Maybe even the EV segment playing into this. And I see that after that, there's a question around why the forecast growth slightly goes down after that. It's mainly because there is a limitation to the market, which ties into the annual PV market. Obviously, there's the retrofit market that you could reach, but I think the economics are not there yet for that to grow or reach the size, a significant size at the moment. I think beyond 2020, that's when we'll see the residential market have a bump in terms of the annual market size. But at the moment, it's limited by how big the PV market is in the individual markets, and there's a limitation in Germany and Italy that just you couldn't exceed because it is basically reliant on how big it is the annual PV market, and energy storage isn't big enough to drive the uptake of residential PV. It's usually driven by residential PV, so that's why it lowers down.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that, Bouts. Okay, well, on that point, we'll bring the webinar to a close. See on the screen for you the contact details for myself and Ease. I'd be delighted to speak with people about this report. It's an excellent report for anyone interested in this sector in Europe. It's really we're a very cost-effective solution. It has high quality and detailed information in, and we'd be delighted to discuss it with you. So feel free to contact us. But I hope the webinar was very interesting for everyone on the call. I see that virtually everyone has stayed on the call all the way through. If you'd like copies of the slides, let us know. We'd be happy to share them with you afterwards. Wish you a good day for the rest of the day and a very happy summer. We look forward to meeting with you and speaking with you in future. Thank you, and thank you, Patrick, for your support.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for organizing. Have a nice week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.